Okay, this is working. Hi, my name is Emily, and I am a novelist and a soap maker and a shut-in. And I am also a born-again Christian. My story with being born again is actually rather interesting. And I am thinking of making a video on that in the future. But I think this time I'd rather share a really interesting dream story with you. I definitely believe that this was a God dream, and I'll tell you why after I'm done telling you about the dream. Now, I'm going to be looking down an awful lot in this because I'm going to be reading the dream from my Word Perfect document. I wrote it so that I wouldn't be sitting here babbling, driving you nuts with blah, 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 and getting distracted and all sorts of stuff. So here we go. This is what I call my hotel prison dream. Okay. My mom, dad, and I were thrown into a makeshift prison by the government because we were Christians. My sister, nephew, and brother-in-law were not with us. Why? The dream didn't say, so I'm not 100% certain, but I think it's because my brother-in-law is in the military. So I'll just say that. So that's kind of a suspicion there. All right. There were no guards around. None. The setting was a very tall, gorgeous hotel that had been stripped of its staff and most of the amenities. The windows were boarded up to the point that there was no way on earth we'd be able to break the window open and jump out. The hotel was located on a beach, practically on top of the ocean water. There was a patio on the ground floor where canopied tables had once been. They were gone now. Once you stepped off of the patio, you were on the sand, and a few steps would have you in the water. Okay? So, past the water breaking upon the shore, there was a little bit of sand, maybe 10 or 15 feet, okay, before the water would have touched the patio. Now, this makes no logical sense in real life. You would always want to make sure that your hotel was farther away because it would prevent flooding of the hotel. But again, this is a dream. Dreams sometimes make no sense when that stuff is concerned. Alrighty, let's see. The patio was enclosed with a hastily made cinder block wall. The wall extended from the decorative brick and glass block wall that came with the hotel all the way to the water's edge. When facing the ocean, there was a huge boulder, I mean huge, okay, which appeared to be volcanic stone of a sort, on the right. Okay, so when you're facing the ocean, and my video's reversed, so I'll just do this. On the right, there is a great big boulder, and it was round, and I remember this very dark stone. It appeared to be volcanic, okay? And I remember I just said that, but it almost would seem to be a remnant of a cliff. Um, and I don't know how else to explain it, but there you go. You can imagine. There was a cliff of the same volcanic stone to the far left and out in the ocean a bit. Okay, so the waves were, you know, encompassing this huge spire. Excuse me, this huge spire. It's weird being backwards. Anyway, so there you have it. Uh, da, da, da. I walked to the waterline to get a better view in the hope that I might find a way out. The wall ended. There was the ocean. I could look to the left around the wall. There was plenty of beach and nobody around to put us back in if we escaped. I thought that was interesting. I woke up and I was thinking, and I'm not done with the dream yet, but I woke up and I was thinking, why weren't there guards around? There were no cameras. There was nothing like that, so I thought that was a little weird. Let's see. The trick was that I'd have to swim around the wall and then come back on the other side. That would be no problem for me because I was a strong swimmer, and I was. I was competitive in high school. Not fast, but strong. Let's see. I dove into the ocean waves ready to make my escape when a huge wave supernaturally landed on me and pinned me to the ground. I couldn't move unless I voluntarily went back to the prison. It like literally held me down like it was conscious. It just pressed me. It was weird. Okay. I struggled, but eventually I had to give up the fight and go back. Frustrated, I went into the hotel. There were a few others there with us as well. For some reason, we'd been placed in there with other well-to-do folks. There was one aging, bald-headed man in a business suit. I will never forget this guy. He was very quiet and looked both resigned and exhausted. There was a room in the hotel where there was a photocopy machine and a computer, etc., but it wasn't too high tech. It was just very basic stuff. That's where the balding man was hanging out. I always got the impression that he was a workaholic. Okay. I had been planning on putting one of my ebooks into print, but those plans weren't going to come to pass because of our situation. Nevertheless, I decided to work on it for something to do. I got sidetracked and went off around the hotel with a group of other folks my age and younger, 30s and under. Okay. We were going to examine the elevator shafts for some weaknesses our captors may have overlooked. I should mention that I'm terrified of falling elevators. That was a non-issue here, though, because the elevator cars were already at the bottom of the shafts side by side. There was no power to them at all, so we couldn't use them, and thus we had to take the stairs if we wanted to go somewhere. Well, no biggie. No big deal. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't mind walking the steps. Anyhow, I was in a group of about 3 or 4 people, and we climbed on top of one of the elevator cars. We were crouching down, and we saw a sample packet of Pamprin, okay, taped to one of the elevator cars. It was weird. I don't know where this came from. Pamprin, just in case you weren't familiar with it, is a woman's medication for premenstrual syndrome. So it helps with bloating and cramping and irritability and such. Okay. So one of these packets was taped to one of the elevator cars. And I thought that was so weird. I'm like, why would somebody tape Pamprin to an elevator car? What's the point? This guy we were with got all excited and took it. We grimaced and urged him to leave the pills alone. After all, we didn't know if they were safe, but he took them anyhow. It was almost like this guy. Anyway, he was injured or in pain. I get the feeling he may have been a pill popper before prison. Nothing special came of it, as we saw a ventilation shaft when we turned around to leave. It looked similar to the ones in Die Hard, where John had to climb down from one to the other. You remember that part? Well, even if you don't, it's like square shaft, of course, so that the rectangular elevator can rise and fall. And then off to the side there were these ventilation shafts, but there was this one that was on the bottom. And heaven only knows why it was there. But it looked like the kind of ventilation that might go through a very large building behind the walls, that, these very powerful central air movers, the machines, central air machines, would pass the air-conditioned air through. Well, there you go with that. But it was very dark inside, okay? We got so excited. We began to explore the shaft, but needed more light. So, until the others could concoct a plan to light the vent, I went back to working on my book. Besides, I knew deep down that it was a futile attempt to keep ourselves from going mad while we awaited constitution. We awaited execution. I got my oh, let me read that for you again because I screwed it up. Besides, I knew deep down that it was a futile attempt to keep ourselves from going mad while we awaited execution. We had to busy ourselves. We had to, because there's no way you can sit around waiting to be executed and not lose your mind if you don't have something to occupy your hands. I got my novel finished for the most part. I took it down to the patio where my parents were standing in obvious depression. I showed the book to my dad, smiling genuinely. He looked at it with sadness. Somehow we knew that my finishing the book marked the end of my time. When I finished it, it would be my turn to be executed. Interesting, yes? My dad looked so wiped out. I knew that I'd be killed before my parents, and I felt so bad about that. I knew that it would be terrible for them. I said to my dad, "I'm sorry about this." He looked at me with anger. The anger was not directed at me, but it was the type of righteous anger that a father may feel when his child is taking the fall for something they couldn't control. And pardon the language, please. "What the hell are you sorry for?" he asked me. "None of this is your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." I knew that. I also knew that I was the reason we were in prison for the first place. In prison in the first place. I guess I was apologizing for writing my book, the Bulletproof series, which is because it was very political and it said a lot of things about the government. But I guess I was apologizing for writing my book and for being the first one to go. I wished they didn't have to see me die. Now, the bad guys were killing me first because I was their child and they wanted to cause more suffering, which is a horrible thing to do. It was my time for execution, so I woke up. I went upstairs. Okay, so this is the end of the dream, but I went upstairs to tell my mom about the dream, and then she told me about her own, which was just spooky because she also had an imprisonment, like a prison camp dream, and my sister, brother-in-law, and nephew weren't there either in that dream. And in neither dream did we escape. Um, But I thought that was especially interesting, just how she and I had the same dream, different things, because it came from a different mind, came through a different mind, but God was sending both of us the same message at the same time about being oppressed for being Christians. Now, I realize that, Mom and I spend a lot of time together, and some of it may have been influenced by world events, but um, to tell you the truth, honestly, I felt the hand of God in that dream. That was so weird for me. I don't have that dream, okay? I have dreams that are more creative than that. That was a little too close to home. And the fact that she had the same dream at the same time, well, I think it's pretty obvious what that was. Well, anyway. All right. So this is Emily, aka Eden Rose Archer, signing off. And hope that the Lord Jesus brings you to his heart and the Heavenly Father brings you home.